Hi everyone,
Hi,
and welcome to our unusual today. We're
today
about a topic to us here at Cievents, that a business that is something. So now, more than ever, businesses be crystal clear about what they stand, how they communicate and behave. Challenging is under the. So during COVID-19, infection COVID-19. We've been drawn together as a global community, calling on each one of us to do our part to contribute to the greater good. That same worldwide approach really does need to be applied when solving other long-standing issues, whether it's climate change, education, inequality, or any of the 17 goals set out by the UN under their Sustainability Development Goals, with a 2030 deadline is very closely looming. Businesses that can drive greater awareness around this and contribute to sustainable positive change by living and breathing their core values their beliefs will absolutely not just survive post this COVID-19 era, but surely also thrive. And in a recent survey conducted by the Harvard Business Review, 92 people actually believe that business success should no longer be measured purely on profit results. And 80% actually cited that they would take lower pay and work for a company with a good and true social conscience than those that don't actually display those values. So ultimately, as businesses and as individuals, we have a responsibility to know our place in the world and really do something about it. And this is really about making a positive difference. And I'm very excited to introduce you today to our panel to discuss these issues and what they mean to us as global citizens and as businesses. So first up, I'd like to introduce you to Simon Doble. Simon is the CEO and founder of SolarBuddy, a Brisbane-based charity that is dedicated to placing a solar light into the hands of 6 million children currently living in energy poverty by 2030. Energy poverty is a global issue that currently affects 1 in 4 people on the planet today and is responsible for killing more people than malaria and HIV combined every single year. Yet very little is known about this issue. And in just 4 years, SolarBuddy has already positively impacted the lives of over 500,000 people and has created over 20 million study hours for children. SolarBuddy has also been named as the only global charity of Flight Centre Travel Group and cievents. So welcome, Simon. Michael McQueen is a speaker, author, and trend forecaster, and has previously also been recognised as a keynote speaker of the year, which is very well deserved, Michael, I have to say. Michael has helped some of the world's most iconic brands navigate change and maintain relevance, which could not be more important in today's changing world. Michael is a leading specialist in organisational transformation, demographic change, and consumer trends. And we have Davinder Mann, Senior Director for Asia Pacific, Global Philanthropy and Engagement at Salesforce. Leveraging Salesforce's technology, people and resources, they provide the best-in-class technology to social impact organisations. Proceeds from the technology also support employee volunteerism, grant making in the areas of STEM education, youth workforce development and technology innovation, and the sharing of the 1-1-1 model, which we will get to a bit later on. So by encouraging and enabling companies to adopt the 1-1-1 model, Salesforce is helping to spark a worldwide corporate giving revolution. So welcome to all of you.
So much.
I might start with you, Michael, and this, the topic of today is obviously that the business that stands for something is something, or as per the title of your book, The Case for Character. What does this mean to organisations in the middle of this global pandemic?
I think this whole theme of being an organisation that stands for something has been, in the public consciousness for a while. But what we're seeing is this time period, this crisis is actually really revealing in many ways just how important that is in some surprising ways. I think something I heard recently, which is so true, so apt right now, is that crises like this don't create great organizations, they reveal them. And so these are the moments where we actually see what businesses really stand for, what their values really are. This is when trust is going to be built in a big way for organizations that do stay true to what they say is important, even when it's tough. I love the quote from Warren Buffett. I remember reading it years ago, and it's applying to the investment world, but I think it's so appropriate for businesses generally. And Warren Buffett said, it's only once the tide goes out that you see who was swimming naked. And I think, you know, when times get tough, that's when you really see what people actually see is important, what their values really are. And we've seen some great examples just in the last little while of businesses that, even though it's costly and it's not convenient, I go, you know what, this is a value that's important. We're going to stick by it. I mean, even as we were chatting the other day, Nat, in the lead up to this call, you were talking about, you guys were looking to roll out, I think you have to clarify, like a sustainability score for events. And you're planning to launch that like imminently. You've pushed that back a few months, but you're still doing it. And this is a costly exercise. I mean, you could be forgiven for going, you know what, the events industry has just sort of died. And so no one would notice if we didn't do that. And yet you're like, no, we're still going to do it because it's a value that we hold really dear. And I think we're seeing some great examples of, you know, businesses in different industries doing this. For instance, Geico and Allstate over in the US, in the last few weeks, have actually refunded huge sums of money to their customers for their automotive insurance because people aren't driving as much. Now, no one forced them to do that. They're just making that choice because, again, it's something they want to say, you know, this is what we value. I mean, even locally, great example I shared on LinkedIn yesterday of these companies up in Port Douglas and Cairns, these dive operators, that because they've got a whole lot of empty boats and staff that aren't busy because no one's going out on the reef right now diving, they're actually sending people out to the reef right now, their own staff, to plant coral. Because they're like, we've always been about sustainability. This is the time we actually show that it counts.
Yeah, it's amazing. And yes, we are still going ahead with that. We're slated for September launch. So with that. So we might go to you next. On the whole, the global response to COVID-19 has proven that we are capable of confronting some significant issues. Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think the response is, you know, collectively, both governmental, community-wise, individually, corporate-wise, I think it's been phenomenal, to be perfectly honest with you. I think how we collectively come together and understood the global issue, certain politicians aside, but we won't mention them. Globally, I think we've all sat down and gone, okay, we've got to deal with this, and how do we do it? And I personally have been pleasantly surprised at how that's been handled, and I think that's resonated from, like I say, from government down through corporates to the individual. And even now with the app that the Australian government have just launched, you know, there was a lot of skepticism around that, but we've already got 10% of the population that are using it, which is only a good thing. And so yeah, I think as a global community, we certainly come together to tackle a global problem very rapidly, which is only a good thing.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess staying with you, Simon, for a second, there's been a lot of talk in the media about this being obviously a really difficult time for non-for-profits, and SolarBuddy is still a very young organisation. You just a couple of weeks ago celebrated your fourth birthday, so happy birthday to SolarBuddy. But you've had a huge amount of success during this time, and you're constantly innovating. Can you maybe share a little bit about your recent innovations and how you adapted these to the times of COVID-19?
Sure. Well, firstly, I've got a fourth birthday haircut. At our fourth birthday, I managed to raise some money for a charity by shaving my hair. So that's one innovation, shall we say. But ultimately, our programs are around bringing people together to understand a common cause and a common issue, and collectively work together to overcome that global issue, which is in our space, energy poverty. So we've had to adapt our methods to suit the new environment. So obviously, primarily we work with school children in schools, and we work with people that employees that work in organizations that go to conferences and events. Very quickly, we understood that the employees are now working from home and the school children are studying from home. So we adapted our program and brought them together and created Family Pack, and went to market very quickly with that. And the uptake has been phenomenal, to be perfectly honest with you. Just last week, we were mentioned in free media outlets on the back of Family Pack and the traction that we've created with that. So, so that's fairly innovative, but we're still keeping our focus on the big picture, which is when we all go back to normal, we want to engage with more people and bigger audiences and have bigger impact. We've also rapidly changed another program that we were getting ready to launch later this year called Solve the 17, which is aligned with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's a team building program where people can come together and learn as a group of people about the sustainable development goals and then overcome certain challenges within those. I know you know this very well because your organization helped us pilot it. That's still a team building environment that we want to create, but we've brought that to a virtual setting very quickly using some innovative software. And I'm very proud of my team that have taken that challenge on and gone, okay, this is an opportunity for us to do something slightly different. And we've actually launched it quicker than what we were going to launch the in-person program. So yeah, we're innovating, but we're still keeping our eye on the big picture, which is engaging with people in person to feel empowered to illuminate the futures of children all across the world.
Yeah, which is amazing. And just to be clear, the gentleman's haircut was not a prerequisite for this call. That was just a coincidence to everybody out there. So Dav, we might move on to you. And can you please share with the audience the concept of Ohana at Salesforce and what that means to you personally and also the people of Salesforce, as well as the 111 concept?
Sure. So Ohana is something that's very important to us here at Salesforce. Ohana is the Hawaiian word for family. And here we think family means our employees, our customers, our partners, the community in which we live and work, as well as our nonprofit partners that we work with. And this concept kind of guides our behavior and principles in everything that we do. And if you add on to that the 111 model, so the 111 model was something that we pioneered when we first founded the company 20 odd years ago. And back then, committing 1% of time, product, and equity, was zero. But we knew that over time, as the company grew and became successful, we wanted to make sure that that program grew in line with that. And as a result of having done that from the beginning, we're really fortunate to have this amazing volunteering and giving back culture. I'm really proud of the employees that we work with. They just ticked over 5 million volunteering hours since we started to sort of log those, which is fantastic. So it's getting stronger every year. And one of the other really cool things about it is, we helped launch the Pledge 1% movement a few years ago to encourage other companies to get onto this as well. So in whatever manner it is that they can give back to the community, we want them to do it. So far, there have been thousands of organizations globally that have signed up to this movement.
That's amazing. And I do, I have to say, and I think I mentioned to you this the other day, we are obviously a customer of Salesforce, and that spirit of Ohana, whether you're in an office here in Australia or at your headquarters in San Fran or meeting with any of your people, always really shines through, and it really is amazing to see it in action. So congratulations on that. Dav, you mentioned this concept of not only social awareness, but social responsibility. And it really is an integral part of the DNA at Salesforce. So what have you been doing during this COVID-19 era to keep that at the forefront of your organization and to keep engaging with your people?
Yeah, sure. So look, we were really fortunate at the beginning of this crisis. Our leadership came out strong on two things that really resonated with me. One was looking after us as employees, and two, making sure that we were looking after our stakeholders. So for me, that is, our nonprofit partners, our schools, our food relief organizations, whoever they might be. So it was really critical for us to be in a good space to help them and to make sure that they knew that we were there for the long haul. This wasn't just about, dropping a grant here or there and then not following through to see how they're going. It's about staying with them for the long journey. We have in this current crisis and climate that we're in, we have a moral duty to follow through with our purpose, okay? Whatever what's going on around the world just makes it more for us to do this now. And from a people perspective, we see some really, really cool things. So our employees have done all manner of volunteering from home. So we've got our recruiting team that are working with underserved university students on CV building, interview skill workshops. We've had our office management team who are still working with their suppliers for, say, for example, the food that we would typically get in and our snacks. And what they're doing is redistributing that to food relief organizations and to other nonprofits that we work with. And of course, we have the amazing SolarBuddy. We took up the Family Pack initiative a couple of weeks ago, and employees across the country, we opened it up to them and their families. So we wanted to make sure that, the physical sense of volunteering and giving back is really important, and the opportunity to do that at home with your kids, as well as bringing things like the Sustainable Development Goals to life, was an amazing opportunity. And the feedback that we got was phenomenal. People are really, really keen for more. There was definitely a craving to do more things like this. So we're on the lookout. And I think overarching all of this, the key thing is if your culture is strong, these things will happen organically. So our employees were given permission to trial things, to innovate, and more importantly, to fall forward when it comes to all of this, because it is a constantly evolving process. And, you know, from my perspective, it's okay also to say, look, we don't know right now how to fix some of these things, but we're going to give it a really, really good go. And we're going to constantly try and reach out to the people that we need to and try things.
Perfect. Thanks, Dav. And I just want to ask, there's a little SolarBuddy behind you there. I just want to know, did you build it and does it work?
Yeah, I've built several. Here's another one that I've done. So,
okay, perfect.
Yeah, I've got
Okay, we might need to ship them soon for you. So Michael, this notion of a cynical view equals a smoke screen. Can you share a little bit of your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, is it any wonder that people are a bit cynical when it comes to organizations saying what they value? Because we've seen over the years, and certainly in the last few years, organizations say they value one thing, but then behave in a very different way. And over time, of course, that gap between what's espoused and what's actually the experience of an organization, the wider that gap gets, the more cynicism naturally grows. And I think the reality is there was a time where you could say, these are our values. You can put them out to the world in a glossy brochure or put them on a website or even verbally say them. But if that didn't translate into action, you could get away with it for a period of time. You can't do that now. And this is the environment we're all in. And of course, if you look at the whole theme of trust, which has been a big part of my research over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, how do you build trust in an age of skepticism and cynicism and transparency? I mean, the stakes are high and they're higher than they've ever been before, but this is a massive opportunity if you get this right, sort of win the hearts and minds of your marketplace and your stakeholders. I think that the theme I heard recently, I actually read this a few days ago, was this notion of the glass box principle, that every organization today is operating in a glass box. We used to operate in black boxes where no one really knew what was going on inside the organization. That's no longer the case. You're in a glass box. Everyone knows. And if for no other reason, because your staff can tell very quickly the outside world what's really happening in an organization. And we've seen that just in the last few weeks. I'm at Amazon. I mean, for instance, there's a congressional inquiry right now happening in the US. I'm looking at Amazon's practices around, essentially looking at what's selling on their platform. So if they've got merchants who are selling products, if one product is having great success, Amazon are actually monitoring that data, even though they say they don't, in order to create their own private label product to compete with their merchants. And that's something that Amazon have said they've never done, but actually staff now coming out saying, actually, that's going on. It's gone on for ages. And so these are the moments now where we've got to make sure we are walking our talk. Otherwise, again, the stakes are very, very high.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Simon, when we talk about the business that stands for something is something, you get a very unique view in running a charity and seeing when companies put their mettle into action. And what has surprised you during this time, both negative and positive?
To be honest with you, it's mostly almost all positive. We're very fortunate as an organization. We have multiple programs, multiple engagement touch points and multiple revenue opportunities. So we have a large audience that we can engage with. And from a corporate point of view, touching on what Michael mentioned and obviously where Dav comes from, we have been blown away, literally amazed at the amount of organizations that have come to us, approached us and said, hey, we've supported you in the past. We're not going anywhere. We want to support you now. How can we help? We want to stand next to you. We want to keep pushing you along. And for me, I never expected that. I expected it in a small part, but not as hugely as we received. And that's been a huge positive from our point of view. And in testament to the relationships that we have, the organizations that we constantly work with, you guys in Salesforce included. And it's been phenomenal. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't like to dwell on any negatives, but I've heard stories of funding dropping off for a number of different charities, which is unfortunate. But also you've got to take your own responsibility. You have to innovate. You have to be positive. You have to radiate positivity. I've looked at this whole COVID issue, and certainly with my team, is an opportunity to look at how we are operating, what we're doing right, what we were doing wrong, regrouping in a lot of ways. And I think our corporate partners have understood that and embraced that as well. And that's been invigorating for them. But ultimately, aside from the global issue, it's an organizational point of view, it's been a fairly positive circumstance for us. And I can't thank all the corporates enough for allowing us to do what we've done over the last few weeks.
Great, thank you. And good to hear that you're getting so much support. You know, I really do believe that now is a time to not shy away from our purpose and what we stand for. Now is a time to truly be brave in our businesses, but also hold on to and follow on our purpose more than ever. And it's been well documented time and time again. The companies who repeatedly and consistently demonstrate their commitment to their purpose outperforms their competitors tenfold. But it's really not an easy thing to do when you have lots of competing priorities. So, Dav, how can organisations in uncertain economic circumstances continue to give back to their community in which they live and work?
So look, we've touched on this already a few times. I think it's around making sure that, one, your leadership is putting this at the forefront as to how important it is. Like, what can we do for the community? And two, it's about staying true to who you are. This is more important now than ever. So look, you know, you might not be able to conduct business in the same way that you used to, but you can still stay true to your values and your purpose. So adapting and pivoting where you need to, you know, for us, it's about looking at our Ohana and finding new ways in which we can contribute. So being in business and continuing to provide product and services and employ people is just a part of that. And every organization out there, you know, everyone is different. So in this situation, it's about how do you approach the community in the best way to be impactful to them. You know, is that a way in which you can potentially deliver your product in a different way that can interact differently? Is that something that you can maybe access an audience that you wouldn't have been able to before, or an audience that couldn't access what you do before? And there are some really simple ways that you can kind of reevaluate or look at what you're doing. So one is practicing fearless listening. So to your employees and, you know, all of your stakeholders, what is it that they need? How can you make this happen for them? There are lots of things happening at the moment around, you know, people feeling stressed and anxious. So make sure that you're listening and listening with intent and creating like judgment-free zones. So, you know, once that happens, people will come forward with ideas. They will come forward with expression and innovation that's crucial to getting through this and getting other people through this. And, you know, extend grace, because how you act, people will remember during this time how you acted, and you're still going to be working with a lot of these organizations when we come through this. And, you know, Simon's talked about this, and I think it might, you know, be great if you touched on it a little bit more, was around communicating with hope and optimism, right? Because we need people to know that we're there for them. It's not about self-preservation, it's about everyone's preservation. So deal with empathy and, you know, remember, we are going to get through this. This is a horrible blip in time for the moment for so many people and organizations, but it will be over and we will come through this. Great,
thank you. And I might just ask you the same question, Michael. You know, as a trend forecaster, what do you see will be the difference between those companies that simply survive, you know, post-COVID-19 and those that truly thrive?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a good question. This is really, I guess, in a way, been at the core of my work for like 16 years, looking at how to navigate disruption and, you know, looking at brands and businesses that do this well versus those that don't. And I mean, this is just another disruption. It's just of a greater magnitude than most of us have ever experienced. And it's also, it came so quickly, sort of out of left field, but that's something sort of how disruption occurs anyway. So, you know, I think for a lot of us, this is something that really we need to approach very thoughtfully, to not sort of go into panic mode, but be as strategic as we can. And, you know, when the world started falling apart a few weeks ago, and we first started seeing how massive this thing was going to be, the first thought that came to mind was a quote from Winston Churchill. And Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And I reckon there's just such like rich wisdom in that insight. This notion that this is, I mean, this sucks. No one would choose this. But if we sort of position ourselves and our mindset, well, this actually is an opportunity, and not just an opportunity for new business and new products. I mean, that's certainly there, but this is an opportunity to sort of step back from, you know, business as usual. And I love the title of this, you know, webcast as well. You know, not just business as usual. This is business as unusual. So let's step out of the normal mode, break out of autopilot, not operate on instinct, and actually think seriously. What do we need to change? What can we do better, do differently? Because this gives us an opportunity to do just that. And we were chatting with a colleague yesterday, a client, yesterday, who he's a CEO of a big financial services company. They moved their entire customer service team of 680 people to working from home in the space of 8 or 10 days. Now, he said, it was interesting, he said, we've talked for years about having a flexible work environment, but this forced us to do it. And the opportunity now is they've actually learned how to do that. So once this passes, the way they operate will change in some really positive and enduring ways. So there is opportunity here. I guess my caution would be that as we look to adapt in the face of this crisis, don't become what I've been dubbing recently a crisis chameleon, where you just change everything that you do to try and fit in with what's going on right now, because this will pass, as Dav has just said. And when it passes, you want to make sure that your brand is not so diluted and weird because of what you try to adjust and do that it actually does long-term damage. I'm seeing that in the speaker landscape right now. A lot of keynote speakers who, you know, completely shifted their content focus and expertise to try and be experts in working from home and running webinars. I'm like, if that's not what you were an authority in before this started, don't just shift to become that, because when this passes, the market will be very confused due to a lot more long-term damage. And I think that's so relevant for lots of businesses. So when it comes to our mindset, my simple encouragement to leaders and to brands would be, we've got to be careful not to get stuck in trying to regain or retain what was, because that world has passed, it's gone. Things have changed, disruption has occurred. We can't just try and manage what is, because this is really a difficult time. The focus has got to be on trying to build what could be, you know, what can come next after this. And that's really where we need to spend our time, energy, and focus right now.
Yeah, thank you for, I mean, some great insights there from all three of you. Thank you. And I think, Michael, to that point, you know, we are going through a little bit of a reimagining phase, as we're calling it, within our business. So what will the world of meetings and events and conferences look like post this? And how do we stay true to who we are as a business, and, you know, creating experiences that engage and inspire, and stay very true to our values, but make sure that we do adapt, and, you know, we do take the lessons out of this. So couldn't agree with you more. Now, we do have some questions as well, so I might throw them out to you. So Dav, the first one is for you, really. How do brands with a strong and clear purpose, such as Salesforce, stand out in a price-driven market?
So I think that, look, it goes to what Michael was saying. It goes to some of the things we've covered. It's around keeping true to who you are. You don't want to, I love the word, the chameleon term, because you don't want to Jekyll and Hyde to your audience. Okay, so I think remember why you started doing what you were doing in the environment that was clear and you know, COVID-free. And those principles should still guide you through what's happening now. Yes, you have to do things differently, but those principles shouldn't change. And another thing, like, just do something. Okay, I think it's really critical not to sit back right now. You know, from a volunteering perspective, just a random example, there are plenty of things that you could be doing online right now, whether that is mapping a disaster area or whether that is online mentoring. There are lots and lots of things that you can do. So take that step forward to try something and keep that going.
Great, thank you. Wise words. Michael, the next one is for you. Our business is guided by our core values. So how do you communicate those values in a way that resonates with your audience to create raving fans?
Well, I think you got to look at what, you know, organizations that are doing this really well. And I think, you know, Dav's example there at Salesforce is a great one. I mean, this idea of how do we codify values? Ohana, a word, a concept that is evocative, that actually, you know, sparks imagination. That's a good start. I mean, words are powerful. Now, it can't just be verbiage. It can't just be the words. It needs to be embedded in culture as well. You need to have things that reinforce that. I mean, I love the 1 + 1 + 1, this idea of how do we actually give people some guidance around how to quantify putting our values into practice. And that's a great example. The challenge for all of us is also how do we incentivize it? And I was doing some work with Dyson a few years ago, and I was so impressed with the culture at Dyson. And, you know, one of their big cultural hallmarks is this idea of being inventive and audacious and taking risks. And when they noticed a few years ago that was starting to sort of fall away as a culture, that to try and reinstill it, they created these things called Dyson Spirit Awards. And every year they give out awards to staff members. And I love this. The only way you can win a Dyson Spirit Award is having tried something in the previous year that failed. And I love that because it's such a great way of, you know, really simply and tangibly saying, this is what we value. I mean, everyone says, hey, fail fast, fail frequently, but let's actually codify that. Let's incentivize. I think these are the ways we can make values a real part of an organization's culture.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've actually not heard that. Yeah, we talk about fail forward in our business, but that's a great way to actually really, as you say, incentivize it.
Yeah.
Simon, the last question is for you. So how do we be effective during this season to impact the lives of others for the better and with a lasting impact?
That's a great question. The first thing that came to my mind when this whole issue erupted was mental health. Certainly from a young child's point of view, it's the scariness of what this means to young children and how it impacts, and seeing it on the news all the time and people talking about it and the world changing around. And that was my first instinct, was what does this look like to young children? And then that got me thinking around the whole, my whole organization and my, there's people that work here that have children, and what does it mean for them to be at home? And so that was a big thing for us, managing the mental health for everybody, not just us as an organization or individuals, but our extended families and that sort of thing. So two words that resonate with SolarBuddy is illuminate futures. And I think that's probably a good way of looking at how we can leave a lasting impact in this particular season. Our job is to illuminate futures regardless, whether that's a school child in Australia to illuminate their future, to know more about sustainable development goals and how to be a global citizen. But I think that's really important to remember is we need to look after each other. We need to be positive. We've radiated positivity out of this organization. We came together as a group of people right at the beginning and said, hey, this isn't gonna be the end of us. This is an opportunity. Not to be complacent and not to be negative, but an opportunity to be positive and reevaluate and understand the shifting sands and come back better and brighter and illuminate more futures, essentially. So I think that's probably how I would look at it. I've been really satisfied and filled with warmth about how our extended families have responded and they're looking after each other. And going back to the whole corporate support element around this conversation, what's really satisfied me and warmed me is the amount of senior leaders within major corporations have come to us asking how they can help, how they can mentor, how they can support, knowing that I have a fairly young team around me, what they can do to help in times where they're working from home in uncharted waters. And that's been a huge thing for us as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And thank you, Simon. Thank you, Dav. Thank you, Michael. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. I could personally keep talking about this for hours and hours and days, as I'm sure a lot of people who've joined us today would love to hear more. But thank you. And I think what's really kind of come through there is that notion of be true to yourself, try different things, do just something and be authentic in doing it is really, it's in all of us, and that's what will help us get through to the other side and truly thrive. And we do believe that it's important to turn thoughts into discussion and really above all action. And this is really what drives us at CI Events. Pardon me, to support the events industry, including our own people, many who are on stand down, our customers and our partners through this Business as Unusual webcast series, and our ongoing partnership with SolarBuddy, which is just coming up to its 2-year mark, which is great to see and will absolutely continue, obviously, into the future. And we want to make it easy for organisations to rediscover their true north through authentic discussions that encompass not only event strategy, but how do we weave purpose into events and make every interaction a truly meaningful interaction. So please, if any of you would like to discuss this topic further with us at CI Events, myself, Dav, Simon, or Michael, please reach out to us via LinkedIn or via any social handles. We'd love to continue to have this conversation with all of you. And I just thought I would leave you with a quote that I recently heard from actress Lily Tomlin, who said, somebody should do something about that. And then I realized I was somebody. And really, it's our individual call to action that makes us do amazing things together. And COVID-19 has certainly provided us with the opportunity to really do just that and come together as a global community. We're global citizens who belong to this global community, and now is the time to act. So thank you for your thoughts, gentlemen. Thank you for sharing all of those insights. I know we've had some amazing comments. Thank you to the rest of you for joining us, and we'll see you on our next webinar in a few weeks. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.